Welcome to Oregon Voters Digest, the program that brings forward the social and political issues that are important to people living here in the Pacific Northwest. And now, your host, Bruce Broussard.
In this segment of the Oregon Voters Digest, I'm Bruce Broussard, your host. Folks, as you know, we're right in the midst of the campaign. There's some important dates that are going to be coming up. That date is voting date. And all due respect, you'll be getting your voters pamphlets, you know what I mean? You're going to be getting those things, and I'm sure the candidates are out there knocking on the doors, if you will. Pandemic and whatever, that's going to be a tough one to do, but, you know, it's out there, okay? But the fact of the matter is you want to really get to meet these candidates. And I'll be right up front with you. Those first meetings that you normally, when you get those calls to come to maybe a rally or something like that, you got to remember, if there are 5 or 6 candidates, whoever basically put it together, that's who the people are going to be. That's where the majority of the people are there. And a lot of times the questions are going to be asked that way. So the thing you want to do is stick with those issues that are relevant here within our state, the state of Oregon, and in your respective areas where you're living in throughout the state. And then you just basically, as you know, Oregon is huge, but Portland, Oregon is the largest city in the state of Oregon that we reside in. And also the issues, the major issues that a lot of times that are being promoted in the media, in all due respect, comes from Portland and Multnomah County, where the shootings are occurring, where all of the garbage is and the needles and things of that nature. Well, guess what? Those are some key questions. Those are some key concerns with you. So I would suggest very strongly, if you go into an arena and someone is talking to you about maybe budgetary, I understand that, the money, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, but hit those areas, those issues that talks to you at your home. I mean, the whole issue with homelessness, if you will, and maybe the camps or whatever, and the trash and the garbage, and like I said before, not being redundant, the needles, if you will. We're going to have a bunch of needles out during the summer. People are going to be shooting up and whatever. But anyway, we can discuss a lot of these things. But I want to make sure you get those points across. Make sure you ask your questions. And whatever you see in the media and this, that, and the other, that's the media. The fact of the matter is you ask your questions. Very important, especially if you see that candidate. Okay, well, what we're going to do, as you can see, I'm going to continue talking the way I'm talking at this point in time. But this particular show is about an update of what has happened before now, and now we're getting into a serious part of the campaign for the primary. Okay, got me? And so that's what I'm going to be doing this particular hour. And I have with me today someone that's joining me who's been on the show before. But as you know, we got something like 30 some odd folks that are running for governor. But the fact of the matter is that you can reach out to these folks. They know I'm on. And I've invited anybody that's running for office. They can give me a call here at 503-701-0457, and I'll be more than willing to accommodate them. Okay, on the line. But what I have today is a gentleman who's been on. He's a former Marine. Once a Marine, always a Marine. And in fact, he's got his cover on now. He's getting ready to put his cover on right now. He's gonna get his cover. He's one of those tough Marines, but you gotta get your cover. I gotta make sure he gets his cover on, because the guy's, he's really a reputable guy in his own rights and whatever. And I want to make sure that he's there. But he's a very solid person. And anyway, his name is George Carrillo. Right? George Carrillo. Did I do it right?
That's right.
All right, George Carrillo. He's a Marine. Now, I don't know if we went to boot camp the same way, but I know he was a pretty tough Marine, But I was a guide on. I did the guide on piece, okay? I did the guide on piece, okay? Got me? But anyway, he's here. He's running for office. He's running for governor. And so, like I said, he's going to join me. And he was involved with a little incident that I got involved with yesterday at the county. We had a county chair, and we was at the county commission meeting, if you will, here in the Portland, Oregon area. And as you know, Multnomah County is the largest county in the state of Oregon. And I indicated this to all of the candidates that I talked to, and even on the show, from the standpoint, hey, you need to visit those commission meetings, because a lot of those are televised. And plus the fact it gives you an opportunity to see what the business. They got quite a bit of money there, and when they've got that, when you look at that, the so-called agenda sheet, you'll see where I'm coming from, because there's a number of things that are there that you want to be concerned with, and it's there. And if you have the opportunity to introduce yourself, you have that also, because right before before the meeting began, at the commission meeting, they'll give you an opportunity from the public standpoint, and you are the public, give you the opportunity to speak, give you a 3-minute deal aspect of it. And so please take advantage of that. Get before the people, because I know a lot of you don't have that $100,000 sitting in your coffers, or you're going to basically refinance your home, because that's not the way to go. If I had my brothers, I'd come up with a whole new certification process aspect of it, and give everybody equal time, especially if you file. Once you file, as far as I'm concerned, we need the people who file, because that's the key. That's the key. We're looking for good, strong leadership right now. Folks, we're in a crisis. I'm just being straight up. We're in a crisis. And we got to make sure that we really spend the time to get the kinds of folks that we're going to be electing to office, that they have to be responsible, and they have to have the kinds of qualities that we're in need to solve some of the problems that we're having right now as a crisis. We got the pandemic situation. That's a crisis in itself, and we still haven't gotten to the point where things are over with. There's all kinds of weird things. We got a national crisis, if you will. We got all kinds of things along that line. I would still stay focused on the Oregon aspect of it. And then wherever you reside, especially the candidates, wherever they reside, they may have issues right there. But if you're running for governor, you got to be dealing with the whole state, for that matter. And so Portland, Oregon, and Multnomah County is very interested and critical. I mean, it's the largest county in the state of Oregon. I think there's 34 counties in the state, for that matter. And then you've got you got the largest city within Multnomah County, which is Portland, Oregon. And too often, to educate the public and the voting public living in this area, and the state for that matter, too often when you get media talks as if Portland, Oregon is in total control of the county. They're the chairperson. That's not a fact. No, Portland, Oregon is part of Multnomah County. In fact, they are part of District number 1, or number 2. I'm sorry, number 2. And then you've got 3 other counties. You got 4 districts within that particular county. You got Gresham. You got Gresham in there. You got Troutdale. My point is, I got to make it very clear that Portland, Oregon is not the chairperson for the county. It's just the opposite. The county Multnomah County is the chairperson in this area. And so consequently, when you start talking about people voting and spending monies and this, that, and the other, and the fact that Portland, Oregon is calling all the shots as to where the money goes, no, it shouldn't be that way. There's a tendency that's who basically wants to identify with the monies. And I'm telling you right up front, I'm questioning it also myself, because there are certain responsibilities that the city have. For instance, like picking up garbage. Okay? That's what it is. Like the police work within the area of Portland. But as far as the jail, when they pick these people up, they take them to Multnomah County. Multnomah County is the jailer for this entire area. And that's a very important piece. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that part, because that jailer part is very, very important. You know what I mean? And I've talked to George about this piece, and I got to get him in this conversation, because he's the governor. I got to see what he's got to say today about some things. So anyway, George, welcome.
Thank you, Bruce.
Okay, good enough. This is community television, as you know, and so we're not the major media, and this is a volunteer job here. This is not a paid job. I don't have a staff. It means I've got to get out there, and so that's one of the things that I did, George. So I want you to know, I just to make sure that I'm at the table too, during this process of the primary. I have filed for chairman of the Multnomah County also too. So I'm a candidate. I'm a candidate, folks. I'm a candidate. So the bottom line, you get to know who I am for sure. But I'm a candidate. Naturally, I'm looking for your vote. But more important, and I'll give you a little. My point is that beforehand, and I've learned this through my time, in terms of being involved in politics per se. what I've done is that beforehand, when I was doing these shows without being in office, I would call these folks up and they wouldn't listen. Or I want to talk to an issue or get before the county. They wouldn't listen. They would just give me my 3 minutes and whatever. But the moment I filed to run for office, it's a whole different ball game. I'm at the table. Okay, so that's another important piece. I want you to know that. So consequently, when you tell your neighbors, tell your friends about this show. Tell them about who George is, if you will. Once you've seen the folks that are here, I'm talking about community. I'm talking about the voting public. My whole job here is to inform and educate you. That's why we call it the Oregon Voters Digest. In fact, it was the first blue book of Oregon. How about that? See what I'm saying? Okay. So with that, George, let's when we start off with you from the standpoint. What are you doing right now? I mean, I know you've been on before and whatever. Tell us a little bit about what are the things, some of the things that you're doing. I know you're knocking on doors and a little fundraising here and doing this, that, and the other. But educate us. Tell us what's going on.
So,
And what are you hearing?
my days, of course, are consumed with normal work life, but also to running a campaign.
Okay.
It's another 8 hours of my day.
Lift your head up. They want to see your eyes.
Oh, okay.
Lift it up a little
There
bit.
you
Let's
go.
see.
Is that
There you
better?
go. Yes, that's better.
you go.
That's much better. Better.
So it's really reaching out to the public, having as many conversations as possible, doing shows like this, with other media outlets.
Right. Okay.
I'm on the radio, on podcast. There's a lot of work. I'm enjoying it.
Good.
It's very educational because I'm hearing more from community,
Okay.
from people. I'm not really out there, I'll be honest with you, I'm not really fundraising or trying to get in the pocketbooks of people that have a lot of money. This democracy was built off of the people.
Right.
And so that's one of the problems that I think that we have to fix within our politics here in Oregon. We're one of the very few states that don't have some sort of regulation when it comes to campaign financing.
Right.
And that's something that we do really need to reform. There's too many politicians right now that they're really focused on money because they think that provides them the narrative that says, I should be governor because guess what? I can raise a lot of money. Where's that money coming from? Is it from in-state, out-of-state? How many is coming from a super PAC? How many is that coming from the elite of the establishment? And I don't have time to keep attending to people that have even more power and more privilege. I actually want to talk to the voters.
I got you. That's a very important piece. Okay, got it. But while we're doing that, for that matter, for those of the folks that are looking at you now, and you're going to be sharing this with the media, hopefully throughout the state, for that matter, this show here, and whatever, you can send that to them and all.
Yeah.
But send that out to the media. Let them hear what you just shared, because in all due respect, they are very important. They are very important as it relates to the voting public and educating the public about the candidates.
Right.
Because they're doing the interview, and as you said, they're taking the advertising dollars for sure. But the idea that these are just short blurbs, if you will, and not sound bites and whatever.
Right.
And that's not what they do, but they are in the communication, media aspect of it. But the bottom line is that a lot of times when they're representing folks and whatever, the folks with the money have the money to maybe provide, if you will, to an advertising agency to put it together, or they can find the best writer, if you will, that kind of thing.
Right.
But like you said, the issue is the candidate as it relates to the issues. And so the only way you can do that is really to talk to the person, not 3 minutes, more than 3 minutes aspect of it. And in all due respect, and the person who's interviewing you, if they don't have the background, then they really can't get to the issue. Too often, this kind of business here, people tend to be fearful of this visual stuff, all this stuff that they're talking about, aspect of it. So it's very important to make sure that whatever the host is has some idea of what you're talking about.
Right.
Got me?
Yeah. Well, the media plays a big part in this.
Yes, they do.
So when the media prints something in a newspaper or provides some sort of media attention, and the narrative that they're pushing
Right.
is that, especially for the governor's race, that there's two top candidates, right, out of a crowded field. What makes them the two top candidates?
Yeah.
And we see that over and over again. They keep referring to Tina Kotet and Tobias Reed as the two front runners, right?
Yeah, in fact, here's a good example of that. And I'm just going to show you. Here's a good example. This is a front page piece, from the Willamette Week, but they're just locally in the Portland metropolitan area. But the fact of the matter is, they do get out there.
Yep.
There's a lot, population-wise, that's a number of folks, right? You got me? But and then when you look at the promotional piece in terms of who they interview, they're not going to interview 34 people. As far as I'm concerned, they should interview 34 people. It's very important people. You'd be surprised if they don't have any issues. We need to know, and that's why I said we need to look at the application process when a person filed to run for office. How do they identify what the issues that the media promoted were the most important issues?
Right.
You see where I'm coming from?
Exactly.
And I've not seen no questions asked that way.
Well, let's take a look at that paper here for a second.
Good one, yeah.
So, how many pages are in here, right? There's countless amounts of pages, right? So that the media can push a sports bar event, right? They can give a full page here, right? They have enough space for a crossword puzzle, right? There's let's see here. There's 31 pages here.
Right.
31 pages. So you're going to tell me that you can't find some space to interview candidates that actually have a different point of view from someone that has proven to be a bully in their politics? Being a bully doesn't make you a leader.
That's right. Right.
Because what happens in those tactics is we have closed door meetings. We continue to make people feel marginalized in that process because marginalization isn't always about the color of our skin, right? It's not always a race issue.
Right.
If we look at how we pit people against each other, whether it's from rural Oregon or from the urban areas, that comes directly from our politicians doing what they do best, which is creating more division, right, for votes, because they want to be in power. So, of course, who controls the media? Here's the reality, though. We don't come from generational wealth.
That's right.
We don't come with generational access. So when we talk about the media and the press, the least that they can do to provide, especially for people that have consistently been marginalized in this community here, is the opportunity for our voices to be heard. Because it's not even just about the opportunity for the voices to be heard, but how about to be seen and to give us credit for the things that we have done in our life? Because trust me, I understand that Tina was Speaker of the House. That's great. But I currently work in the executive office. She could only talk about equity. I know how to implement equity. There's a big difference. Right?
Very much so.
But her privilege and her power gives her access that promotes a narrative that no matter what it is that I say, why would you give me money if you think I'm going to lose? Because look what's in the front page.
Right. Good point.
So that's how you keep people down. Now, she can use her power and her privilege with the media and say, you know what? Let's have more debates. Let's get the media. I want the media. If I'm going to be governor, I'm going to lead by example. And I want the media to start interviewing other candidates. Tobias Reed has the same responsibility. They've both held public office.
Yep. He was treasurer, right? State treasurer?
He was state treasurer. Majority of his financing from his campaign is from out of state. Right? But yet we are valuing and we're saying that these are going to be the possible 2 future leaders of our state. When they don't even know how to share in their power, and the words that they use are empty because they don't understand what the proper implementation of equity really means. That's why we continue to struggle. That's the reason why communities continue to struggle, because we are not getting them the services they need in the way that they need them. Politicians are worried about themselves. When they got into it, I bet that they had very good intentions. But in order to stay in power, in order to continue that status and that privilege, you have to compromise yourself. I am not worried about the next election. I am worried about this election and making all the possible changes that I can. And at the end of it, let Oregon judge me to say whether I've done a good job or not. But we can't resort to the same sort of politics and expect a different outcome.
Well, you know, on that same note, like you said, we talked about that's the gubernatorial aspect of it. But you know, as I reached out to you to look at the county because that's a major deal. You know, from the standpoint of the largest county in the state, and you responded. And a good example of that was again like yesterday, the largest county, right? And I picked it purposely because there are 4 commissioners there and a chair, and 3 of the commissioners are running for the chair. The chair has turned out Deborah Kapori, and 3 commissioners are there. And I think each are basically, they pretty well raised about $100,000 or better, sitting in that seat every day. And the public who has to sit in this one seat out there with only 3 minutes. 3 minutes out of 8 hours, right? You got me?
Right.
And they've got the visual on an ongoing basis, right? You get me?
Right.
See what I'm saying? And then and just as you're talking, you talked about equity. What are the major issues that's causing all the problems in this state? Sitting right here in Portland, in Multnomah County. So when you start talking about the crime, the shootings, and mental illness, and you know, and on and on and on and on, it's happening right in the county. Those are the people that are responsible to solve the problem. But they weren't talking about that, were they? You got me? And then the other thing, and I'm saying that today because that's a critical point that I want to share, because you were there. I asked you to come, and you came. And, you know, and that particular day I was there. I'd been trying to get to lobby them to the system, you know, in our system of government, we always recognize the flag. First we did a flag and then a prayer. Well, they don't do the prayer anymore. They weren't doing the flags anymore. So I started initiating a deal by going up and trying to lobby them to do that. To, you know, basically do the same thing. Recognize the flag, recognize who we are, so to speak, and then a prayer. But the bottom line is you get 3 minutes to do that. And then you can't go beyond that point. You just got 3 minutes. So that was one issue that I brought up. The other issue that when you were there was that the several presidents, the 44th and the 45th president, they had a flyer recognizing Vietnam veterans, that era. 50 years. 50 years, and we've been in that war aspect. And a lot of people's lives were taken as a result of that. And we basically, we honored, if our countrymen, we were basically called to go in, and we went in. You got me? Maybe the politics, it was a different ball game, but we served.
Right.
And many of us were hurting. And a lot of disabled veterans as a result of that piece. I happen to be one of them also, too, and I think you are also, too.
I am also, too.
You are disabled. But the bottom line is that I was trying to get them to understand what that 50-year, what that meant. And I read from that flyer to the commissioners, to the chair and the commissioners. And I got no response. You know, no sense of, like, for instance, what I was wanting them to do would have been like saying, okay, why don't we take a minute of silence to respect those who have given their lives? Did we get anything of that?
No.
And we had veterans up there too, right?
Right.
You were there, and you were there, and you were one of the 3 people that were there, and then we had another gentleman that was there, aspect of it. And then I understand that you stayed there for a bit more than I did because I had to leave. I had another meeting aspect of it. And did they ever stop and say, well, we're going to go on and recognize the 50-year blah blah blah? See, they're the largest recipient of government funds to support veterans. Did you know that?
Yes.
They're the largest one. And you would think that they would be able to recognize veterans. Now you've got 3 people who have been in those seats for a little over 4 years. 4 years. And about issues, these are not issues that just came up. These issues have been there. I've been messing around with that county on different issues, you know, with solid waste and things of that nature and boards or whatever, for 9 years. For 9 years. And I'm sitting up in that 3-minute seat yelling at them constantly. Deal with this issue. When are you gonna pick the needles off the, you know, out there in the front of in the parks and things of that nature that kids may pick up, or the animals would, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I've been doing this on several different occasions over the last 8 years that ran for district number 2 and couldn't get them to respond. You see what I'm saying? You got me? And then here they are running for office. And in fact, they're featured in the Willamette Week. There's some statements that the Willamette Week interviewed, and it was very interesting. They did not talk to them about the issues that they at one point in time cited as the most important issues. You got my point? So and I'm not taking it away even from those folks to a certain degree. I'm saying, hey, we got to change the system to get it so that we can get the type of response that we need to solve the issue.
Right.
That's the key. And that's the thing we're not doing. So I'm not faulting them per se, because in some cases the media supports that. So that's why they need to be at the table for that discussion too. Right. And so like with me, like right now, I've run for office on a number of occasions. But because I know the faults, I'm not going to refinance my home. By no means. I got a family. I got to maintain it. I'm looking for the dream like everybody else.
Right.
For a home or this, that, and the other. But I do know the issues. And I have this talk show. I'm not getting paid. I don't have staff. I have to learn it on my own,
Right.
if you will. So I'm agreeing with you, and that's why I want to make sure I got this issue on the table, because you were right in regards to how well does media's place role. They're very important. They need to stay involved.
Right.
And in fact, they need to be at the table to change, if you will, the application process so it gets it out. They need to be at the table to talk about people like yourself, who are one of the 34 candidates, 33? How many gubernatorial candidates are running? 33 or 32 or something like that?
I think it's 32.
32,
Between
yes.
independents, Republicans, and
right,
Democrats.
Right. So you got 32 individuals. And you're right. You just don't highlight just one person. All of these people have to have a lane that they're traveling in. They have to have some reason to put their name down to run for office. They have to have something. So I want to know that. The people need to know that.
Right.
And the public need to know that. In fact, when you think about it, even in this day and even those issues that they were talking to, that they're major issues, what happened to the veterans? What happened to the senior citizens?
Right.
Well, what about their housing? And the same thing with reference to the whole issue with housing aspect of it. Now it's been said that Ukraine, we're getting that big deal about Ukraine, right? That's huge. Mm-hmm. That's another issue aspect of it. But now locally, from our country standpoint, a number of the Ukrainians are sitting at the border now. The border that we've brought to the table, in all due respect, even in a negative way. Now I'm saying you got people waiting in line one way or the other, trying to develop their life.
Right.
We know about the caste system over there to start with, you know what I'm saying? You got me? But the fact of the matter is these people want a good life just like anybody else. But they're there, and that's an issue. But now all of a sudden we've got the Ukrainians that are at the same table at the border. And then I think the president, Governor Biden, is going to sign a deal that allow at least 100,000 of them to come in right away. Well, what about the other people that are sitting there waiting in line?
Do you mean President Biden?
President Biden. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. President Biden. Sometimes I get a little excited. but this is, I'm glad you brought that up, see? Yeah. But the fact of the matter is, I didn't like that.
Tell me a little bit more. Why?
Well, I didn't like it because we've got issues here to begin with. Don't get me wrong. I understand the concerns. I went overseas in a bunch of waters to go up there and fight for the Vietnamese. You got me? I did what I was supposed to do, aspect of it. So my point is that I'm just saying we got crisis here right now, major crisis. You know, and I understand. So how did they get here to begin with? I thought they were going to be talking about that. Everybody's going to get their fair share, if you will, and try to help people or whatever. But when I saw this newscast about these folks are waiting in line with other folks that we have not resolved the issues with. We just made it a race issue aspect of it, a back and forth routine and whatever. So, I mean, that's another subject I can get in there, pretty heavy aspect of it. But you see where I'm kind of coming from? That's an issue that we need to talk about, because we talk about housing. Well, we here locally, We're talking about housing. Well, what's the definition of housing? I mean, the issue of housing, that's what the dream that everybody's trying to get to. You just don't get that for free.
Right.
Now, I can understand what shelter means, and I can understand about vetting. You know, giving you a place, picking people up and put them in an area where they can clean them up and feed them and this, that, and the other routine, and then check out who they are, blah, 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 routine. But use the system that's already here. Well, whatever system. You know, fair?
So, yeah. So I want to be able to comment a little bit on what you said, because I want to make sure that, you know, the people that are watching understand the words that you're saying. And I'm just going to give you my interpretation.
Sure, yeah.
Right.
That's what it's all about.
So, you know, my interpretation is that, yes, you know, you agree that we should be helping out the Ukrainians, right? But also, too, we also have a backload when it comes to, you know, our immigration process here. So why are we accepting or putting them through a faster process than the people that are currently backloaded, which I think is a fair question to ask. You know, too many times in our government, what we see, whether it's on the federal level or on the state level, is that it's not that we can't, it's just that we don't. And we're consistently in crisis mode because we keep moving from one thing to the other, and we don't actually end up fixing something, right? We bring some sort of temporary solution and we want to celebrate our successes because we were able to do that, because again, it's tied to being able to stay in power. I want to prove to you that I passed this bill, right? But we don't actually go back and actually measure that to see how effective was that? Did we get the results that we wanted? What else should have complemented that also? Because we haven't fixed the problem. It's actually made the problem even worse, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so when we think about what's happening in the homeless community, you know, for me being a police officer, you know, I don't agree with taking people off the streets and charging them with a crime because they're trying to survive, right? I don't believe that we should charge them with disorderly conduct because they're on a public sidewalk, because it doesn't solve anything, right? We tear down their tent, we put them in the back of the vehicle, we haul them off to jail. That takes time, that takes money. They sit in jail, they get a fine, they have to go, you know, through the court system. Now we're backing up the court system. We're issuing fines. They can't pay those fines. Now there's a warrant out for their arrest. Just that process, I mean, that takes so much money in servicing, taking homeless people to jail, right? So I agree that we shouldn't criminalize that, but we didn't take it far enough, right? We didn't do the right things to provide them with other options instead of having to be right here. We never took the time to sit with them, understand what their problems are, and bring them as a solution to the problem. So that way we have community buy-in, that we're all working together in this process. We don't do that. We struggle with that because we come from this level of, hey, I'm in this ivory tower and I know better. And so this is what I'm going to do. And all we do is we repeat history. All the things that you and I have fought for as military veterans, we end up in our government taking us back. We want to create a different form of imprisonment. We fought for the right of freedom and liberty, and yet people here in our local communities don't understand what that means, and so they violate the trust of the public. And then we wonder why they don't want services from us. So when we think about the homeless community, it's not just build more buildings, build more affordable housing. It's not just about that. You have to look at the whole system. You have to look at how are we educating our children? How are we giving them equitable opportunity to achieve the education that they need? Are we setting them up for success? Are we setting people up for success that are exiting the criminal justice system?
Right.
Or are we consistently punishing them where the only outcome is they're going to be homeless? Right? We don't want to see the problem. We want somebody to just take them and push them away so we can go on with our everyday normal lives. So as long as we don't see the problem, we're okay with it. But the reality is that all of these people that are living in the streets of Portland right now, they were homeless just somewhere else. The problem has been able to be more consolidated, which has given more view to the public. Now the public is outraged with it. But when we didn't see it, how come we weren't outraged? How come we weren't uncomfortable? I ask people all the time, at what point did you start becoming uncomfortable?
Yeah.
Because this has been a problem in our society for a long time. So when we look at these policies and procedures and things that we want to put into place and the people that we're going to elect, are we doing the right thing? Or are we just going to follow the status quo?
Well, let me ask you, how would you react to the solution to the problem?
Well,
How would
one of
you
the things
react?
is what I currently do now,
Okay,
which is go out to the public. I go underneath the bridges. I sit in people's tents. I've been in downtown Portland. I've been in Salem. I've been in the rural parts of Oregon. I have sat and had these conversations with people. You know, some are, coherent conversations and some aren't. But what I will tell you is that with every person that I talk to, they don't want this. They want something better. They just don't know how to get there.
Yeah.
There's no service that helps people transition.
Okay. All right. I agree.
Because every time we get people to a position where they're a little bit stable, we want to take away the funding. Not understanding that it takes time. It takes time, and time also means an investment. But it's the same thing in our school system. It's the same thing in people being able to afford a higher education. We give a little bit, and then we take, and then we wonder why people are not successful.
Okay, on that particular note, let me say that time is an essence right now. It's called crisis right now. And I'm going to use as an example Sam Adams, who's working with the city right now. And he's part of the process aspect of it. And he gave an option. He put an option on the table from the standpoint. Everything was fitted from the standpoint of picking them up and things of that nature. But he didn't have a place for them to stay. That was the only thing. He couldn't do that piece. So in all due respect, because of my involvement and whatever, I started thinking about it. And I'm basically, I've been saying, well, wait a minute. It's a crisis. When you start thinking we have a major crisis here in our state or whatever, like an earthquake or anything like that, or a big flood and whatever, what do? We activate the guard. And these are citizen soldiers, if you will. Activate the guard. They pick them up, put them in a location, put temporary whatever housing, tents and whatever's necessary. And a lot of times they tend to try to take them to armories. And we got about 33 of them all over the state. Got me? Because they're all over locations. So it's not about trying to get somebody to basically pick up their properties or this, that, and the other, build new houses. No, they got to do something immediately because that's what we are now. So the name of the game is that I think that one of the things that I'd like to see as an option is that we do go in a humane way because that's a humane. You're not arresting anybody. You're reacting to the crisis. You pick them up, the National Guard, and in most cases, let's say if they're in the Portland area, you try to identify those individuals that are guardsmen from the Portland area as much as you possibly can. Then you fill up the rest. Then you say, okay, fine, let's find a location that could be appropriate to pick so many of them. Okay, got me? We need to know what the numbers are. Hopefully you got that number, but you pick them up, and then in this particular case, we got Camp Withicum over here, 30 minutes away, in Clackamas County. They could pick them up, take them to activate the guard, right? So now they're monthly warriors anyway, right? You got me? You activate the guards, and they got doctors, they got the whole facility, the food, the whole 9 yards, everything is there, compact. Then the idea is the vetting aspect of it. You got folks there that say, okay, fine. And if they're over 21 or 2, they've got a Social Security number. You know whether or not, if they're older or whatever, you know they're either getting a check or they're not getting a check because you can go right there on that technology and find out what they're having. My point is that treat it in that human aspect of it, treat it like it's an earthquake, a crisis situation. We haven't done that. You see what I'm saying? And like I said, so now we tell the public, and then the public say, we need money. So they get this big pot of money, and they're just throwing it after you, just like you're saying. They stop. There's no other options. The same thing with the garbage piece aspect of it. When you start thinking about the garbage, they got services that are giving them the food in paper bags and plates and this, that, and other, and you give it to them and they go, I just throw it anywhere they want to. Well, let's organize it. If you got a facility, you're giving revenue, well, put the table almost like where, not necessarily just inside. If you're going to be downtown or whatever, you just basically, make sure you get some whatever, and close that section off for that day. Put some tables there, and they eat. But you got some boxes there. Throw the trash out there. Just some organized way. And the idea is that, and then the other day, don't have people just basically give them a bag and say go away. That type of routine. Where are they going to throw it?
Right.
See, so I'm just throwing something. I'm just putting some things on the table.
So
we don't have anything. Where do we go?
Yeah. So one thing, in my conversations with talking with the houseless community and also with local community members, there are a lot of community members that have dedicated their life to helping out
Right.
the less fortunate. So I don't believe that everybody just wants to ignore the problem, but I think people are lost on trying to figure out what is the solution.
Yeah.
And so when you think about activating the guard, right? I am very cautious with activating the guard because there's a purpose for the guard. The situations that we have in our streets right now with the homeless population, I don't consider it to be a natural disaster. I do believe that we need to do something rapidly. And what they have told me is that if you're going to want us to go somewhere, then provide us with options and different settings of where we can go. But that there's services that we can get to. Because right now, here's the problem. When you put someone in a houseless community and they have their tent and they have all their stuff, what's a reasonable expectation for them when the services that they need aren't even close? But even if they leave, there's no guarantee when they come back their stuff is even going to be there.
Well, that's another issue, by the way.
Right. It's a big issue.
Yeah,
we have our houseless community that can't even leave their tent from things being stolen. And it's not like we're talking about they're getting stolen like expensive watches, flat screens, TVs. They are worried about their basic necessity, which is shoes, clothes, food. Some of it is expired. They're just basic human needs that they cannot afford to walk away from. So the person that they stay next to, right? Let's say you and I are tent mates. You have your tent here, I have my tent here. Well, guess what? We trust each other. We've developed this relationship. We consider ourselves to be family now, right? So guess what? When I have to go somewhere, just like to go use the bathroom, you're going to watch my tent. I know you're not going to steal my stuff. And I'm going to do the same thing for you. So right there's a reason why we're camping right here in this location, and there's a reason why I am here with you.
Okay.
And so we have to be able to provide a new environment, not to say, hey, this is where we're moving, you're moving into this facility. We need a variety of different temporary situations that is going to meet their needs. Some people don't like to be close to other people. They feel very claustrophobic. Some areas, if you congregate too many people, then guess what? There's more access to illegal drugs or to a pimp that's going to control your life and make you go work the streets. We have to be mindful of all of those. What is going to be that structure within that area that's going to provide them with that opportunity to get services? Right?
Well, now you keep going back to that services. I appreciate that, but at the same time, I'm saying that I just use the idea of the earthquake piece as a sample.
Right.
We don't say anything about that. We're not negative. People are picking you up, if you will, to take to you a safe place, to feed you, figure out what happened to you,
Right.
figure out where you're going to go next, all the things that you were talking about.
Right.
So it's not about, quote, that the services, that's not what they do. That's what they do. You got me? And then the other thing I'm looking at is that as far as their belongings, things that they have, and this, that, and the other, they pick and choose, and they take it with them. Okay, whatever. And that's how it's especially done. I mean, I've already checked it out beforehand.
Right.
But the bottom line is that what we have in existence today it's a hazard. It's a health hazard aspect of it, because in all due respect, they pick up all that stuff, and like you said, the person gonna say, "Well, I'm gonna pick up my this, that, and the other, whatever." But in all due respect, it's not clean. In many ways, it's definitely not clean, or this, that, and the other.
Right.
And then once they house it, you know what I mean?
But we have to provide them with that option, right?
Yeah, but what are you gonna do? But my point is that and that's the other thing. I checked it out a little bit. How many people actually go back and pick it up and start wearing that same clothes that they have? No way. Have you ever checked it out? Have you ever gone to one of those facilities where they house their stuff at?
I have.
Have you seen all of the rodents that are running around those
Yes.
at the place where they house it?
Yes.
You see what I'm saying? So my point, I say, all I'm making the point is that to avoid that piece, this is just because we're just talking right
Right,
now, okay?
right.
But the whole we've got goodwill and this, that, and the other. I mean, folks are just giving stuff away.
Right.
And they check it out, they vet it, and they put the clean stuff, and they sell it to the public in many
Right.
ways and whatever. They even create jobs. So the name of the game is as if to say, okay, fine. If they get caught in that situation, they've lost a list, this, that, and the other, give them a voucher to go to a Goodwill to pick up the clothing stuff aspect of it.
Right.
But the whole idea is that now you've got clean clothes things and this, that, and the other on that end. I'm just trying to say we have a system.
Right.
As far as the housing is concerned, the housing,
But see, right there, you're talking about services, right?
Yeah.
And in those services and the conversation that we're having right now,
right?
we're actually talking about possible solutions to be able to help people, right? We're trying to do this in a humane way. At the end of the day, it has to be the individual's choice to make that choice, because there's other factors that we have to take into consideration, whether it's, mental health or a substance abuse
Right.
disorder. But with all of these things, if we give them the clothes, right, we give them that voucher, and it's good, we're bringing in other community partners to come help us, right? They should also
Right,
be here
right.
at the
There's a
table
lot of
having
folks
this
there, yeah.
conversation.
And they
right?
already exist.
Right. But then, how do they get those clothes clean?
Well,
Right?
but like I said,
then that's another community
that's not,
partner that
but
we
at
have
least
to-
they're clean when my point is when they get back out to do this, that, and the other.
Right.
And that's what I'm saying. If we
But it's
look
all
at
about
this,
sustainability, though.
right? But if you look at the system in that whole process, like I'm still using the earthquake aspect
Yeah.
of it. You don't see those people all over the place. They've gone back to their lives. Think about it. On the other side of the coin, like you said, and I guess the other thing is that, as you know, when we go to the boot camp, and you get off that bus, and you see that first sergeant, it ain't about, hey, son, what do you want to eat today?
Yeah.
Oh, well, you got to stand in that line to get your hair cut.
Right.
And it's not about primping and this, that, and that. My point is that
But see, the difference, though, there is, Bruce, is that we made that choice. You and I made that choice to live that life. We knew when we signed the papers what we were getting ourselves into.
oh no, not necessarily all. I mean, I was ROTC for a while, but my point is that I'd never gone to boot camp,
Oh, right.
and a lot of other. That's all I'm saying.
Right. But I'm saying that,
it's
that,
all
that was a choice that we
right.
made.
But it was a confined kind of an area. They basically told you what you had to do, and at the end of that process, you developed certain responsibilities and assets that you have that we still have today,
Right.
like cleanliness and this, that, and the other.
But look at when we think about sustainability, right?
Yeah.
Whatever plan that we put forward has to be able to be sustainable,
Yep.
and that there is a good
Yep.
plan of transitioning
Yep.
and that help. Because let's talk about vets here for a second. Yes, with our vets, with our military service people, we go through a certain process, right? We give up certain rights to serve this country, right? We are told what to do. We don't have an opinion, and we don't question an order. We do what we're told to do.
Right.
But now, that system does fail our veterans, because when we get out, we have not created a system for our vets that's actually sustainable for many that are actually living outside the streets here on Portland. They've given their lives to their country, yet we can't house them, and we can't feed them, and we can't reach them because they struggle with whether it was a physical disability,
Right, right.
PTSD.
Right.
And so, again, even in the military and coming out of the military, we have not built a system that's sustainable that actually continues to help people. And those people are our people.
Well, I'm agreeing with it, but as you know, I'm very much involved in that piece, from my end of it, from No Vets Left Behind aspect of it. But we have a system. I mean, it works. But the name of the game, you got the entity over here that, yeah, as you know, in the military, you stand in line to do your thing, right?
Right.
You got me? A lot of them are saying, well, gee whiz, they're given kind of the option, you don't have to step in line. Well, guess what? In order to receive the services, you got to step in line. You got me? And the folks who go through that line they receive the services.
But see, that's the problem right now and today. There is no line to go step in. There is nowhere else to go right now. We don't have the infrastructure, even a temporary infrastructure built for them to actually have that option to go to.
Okay. I'm gonna challenge you on that one. I'm just saying we're talking right now.
Right.
But let's say that might be a way that we need to check that system out. We need to vet that system.
Right.
That's some of the things that I'm doing, so to speak. I'm reaching out to vets. When they make that statement to them, I pick them up and take them on down there myself physically. And then all of a sudden you find out other little things, but then things straighten up. In fact, when you go down to these facilities, you don't see butts on the ground. You don't see a bunch of trash. You don't see no tents at these service centers for vets, right?
Right.
You got me? And so when I think about that, and I think about the other vet over here, sometimes they got a bad discharge or something of that nature. They got other issues, right? You got me? And then I follow up through that because there's a process that you can go and challenge that, and eventually you can maybe get a good DD 214 because you can't receive those services unless you have a DD 214 aspect of it. But my point is that, but still they went through boot camp. And when you go down to these camps and whatever, a lot of times, the first thing I want to do, I want to find out if there are any vets around when I'm talking to them. And when you go to his camp, as opposed to this other guy's camp, his is cleaner. You don't have any trash running all over the place, and he'll recognize who you are. And all of a sudden, there's something about we're all brothers and sisters on that line aspect of it. And see, that to me is not being utilized. For instance, I would say you go to a campsite. I would say, okay, fine, if they got a couple of extra dollars and they're looking at this stuff where they clean the place up and then they just move right down the streets or whatever, I say, wait a minute. Look, no. I'm not going to be picking up anybody else's trash. I'm not going to be picking somebody else's poop. You got my point?
Right.
So the key is that if you can identify a vet and give them a couple of bucks to just go around and talking to the various folks and said, okay, fine. Hey, man, you got a bunch of trash out of your place. You ought to pick it up. And people will respond according to that. The vets will definitely respond to the piece because they won't do it as much. So I'm just saying, the system is there. A lot of times, we just need to tweak it a bit.
Well, we have the resources to be able to provide not just services, but temporary facilities. There's some things that need to be built in order for the model to be sustainable until we can actually build more permanent supported housing, throughout the state. The problem is that we fail to understand how to implement that strategy, right? Because we're not having the right conversations with the right people at the table. Right. You and I may or may not disagree on the implementation of it, but we've at least identified some partners that we should be talking to help be part of the solution, to be part of how do we actually sustain this if we actually put this forward, right? But that's what needs to happen. It's not due to a lack of that there's no space. It's not due to the lack that we don't have enough money. Do we have enough money to build everybody a house? No, we don't, right? That's not the reality. Do we have enough money to provide equitable opportunity for different availability of shelter? Yes, we do. We do. And as a temporary solution. But we also have to understand that in order to get people to understand what is happening, we have to educate them, right? We have to go out into the community and have that conversation.
Through these mediums too, by the way.
Exactly. Because that's how they're going to understand that they're part of the solution, right? Because if you tell anybody, I'm telling you to do this, right? Nobody responds well to that. But if we bring them to the table, we have them a part of these groups, and we're having these conversations, they're going to be the advocates too of their local community, of their houseless community, to spread the word, right? Not everybody that's houseless is dangerous. Not everybody has substance abuse. Not everybody has a mental health disorder, right? If you think about it, one of the major crises that we're facing right now here throughout the state is that any one of us is a paycheck to 2 paychecks from being homeless.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. And they're not homeless. Yeah. I mean, a lot of folks are right there on the edge.
Exactly.
Aspect of it.
Exactly.
And again, and I'm glad we're having this kind of a discussion. And that's basically the point I'm trying to make to the viewing audience. We need to have more of those discussions.
Exactly.
And the people who are running for office, I'm basically interviewing you.
Right.
You know, trying to,
Right.
And
Exactly.
I'm doing my thing to get out of you what you bring to the table.
The thing is,
as a solution.
you're being a responsible voter.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
And
I am a voter.
right now, what we are facing is that we have a lot of voters
Yeah.
that aren't practicing that privilege of voting, of getting themselves educated, because it's a responsibility of all of us to elect who our future leaders are. If we don't participate in this democracy,
Right.
everything will always be
Oh yeah.
dictated
Oh
to
yeah.
us.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And that's not what you and I signed up for.
No, that's right. That's right. That's
We
right.
signed up to be a part of a democracy that continues to fight for the freedoms of people. But if we're not participating, then we cannot sit here and complain about things that are not getting done if we are not being responsible and participating in voting.
Well, look, this has been a good discussion. We got about another 2 minutes aspect of it, and let's see if we can come up with a closing statement. You know, from the standpoint of what are you planning on doing now? You know, from the standpoint of getting out there and doing some more whatever.
Yeah, so right now I am just continuing to do a very grassroots campaign, talking with the people, and I'm trying to reach as many people as possible. From the last time that we talked, I told you my social media presence was like 40,000 people that were following me. That's gone up. I'm closer now to, I believe, almost 52,000 people that are following me on social media.
Okay.
So, the word is getting out there.
Right.
And right now, I'm just, like I said, I'm hitting the canvas hard, trying to talk to as many people as possible. And, I'm pretty confident that Tobias and Tina are going to be really surprised when it comes to the primary.
And the others too.
Yes.
Let's make sure we include the whole 32, whatever, because everybody has something to say if you file. I'm giving them that respect to start with, but I'm still saying we need to clean that up. We need to change the application process.
Yes.
When a person filed to run for office.
Well, I think all of the candidates, like I said in the beginning of the show, that they need a voice too.
Right.
So what I will say is there is a debate
Okay.
that is coming up on April 18th at the University Hotel.
Okay, good. Sounds good. Well, look, this has been great. And hopefully the viewing audience felt good about this particular session. I plan to continue these and through the campaign. This is a primary, and then naturally we go into the general election. And sometimes we'll have those runoffs. I'd like to see more runoff. I think we need those runoffs more so today than in the past, because we need to have these kinds of discussions. And we're going to be doing everything we can here at Open Signal, and at the same time trying to get the word out, talk to the issues, and talk to the candidates like I've done here. This is not a 3-minute soundbite. This is a bit more than that, and we need to do that. So look, have a good one. Thank you very much for being with us. Thank you, George.
Thanks, Bruce, for having me again.
Have a good one, folks. See you next week. We can just keep talking.